Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. We continue our study of the book of Joshua, the book of Yehoshua. We are at chapter 18, that's Perek Yud Ches today. And a lot of this is, again, place names and boundaries. So it's not super exciting, but it starts off with some interesting things. So we discussed the boundaries of the East Bank a few chapters ago, of the portions of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. We discussed the borders and boundaries and cities of Judea, the southern portions, and Benjamin. We discussed the lands of Manasseh and Ephraim on the west bank of the Jordan, and now large parts of the land are under the people's control, and we are approaching the end of the fighting that occurred during Yoshua's days, the conquering that occurred during Joshua's days, and there's still a lot left to do in terms of conquering for the other tribes and areas, but Yeshua is going to have to pass on the baton to those that succeed him. But we still have a little more to talk about, which occurred during Yeshua's days. So remember that the camp that they camped in when they first crossed the Jordan River was at Gilgal. And Gilgal was the center of control and where the main camp was as these battles were taking place. And one of the main symbols of the center of the capital, of course, was the Tabernacle, the Mishkan, which was still the traveling version of the Mishkan, which traveled with the people through the wilderness, but it settled down in Gilgal. And now they needed a better place for it as the land is conquered. And Vayikohalu kol hadas b'nei Israel Shiloh, and the entire community of the people of Israel gathered and congregated in a place called Shiloh. Vayashkinu sham et ohel moed, and they rested there, the tent of the meeting, which is the phrase referring to the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the land was conquered before them. In other words, they were now settled. They had their place. The main enemies were conquered, although not completely, as we'll see shortly. So, Vayashkinu Sham gives the language that we had, if you remember, from Deuteronomy 12, that's Devarim, Perek Yud Beis, that it says, Shemo Sham, to rest his name there. The same language of Lishakein, Vayashkinu. So that's where God's Mishkan is named after the same root word there. It's the Shin Chaf Nun, Lishakein. Now, of course, this isn't the ultimate place choice, which will eventually, several hundred years down the line, be in Jerusalem, but we're not there yet. So, Vayashkinu Sham et Ohel Moed, they put it in Shiloh, which is where it remained for quite some time. Vayivatru b'nei Yisrael, but there remained among the people of Israel asher lo chalku et nachlatam shiva shvatim, 7 tribes that had not yet divided up what their land is. So remember, Reuven, Gad, Manasseh, Ephraim is 4, and Yehuda is 5, right? So there were 7 portions that still had not yet been divided up. So Vayomer Yeshua b'nei Israel. So Joshua said to the people of Israel, Ad ona atem misrapim, how long is it going to be that you guys are going to be lazy about this? Lavo l'reshes haaretz, and you're not going to go and inherit and possess the land asher nasan lachem Adonai le'avosechem, that God has given you, the Lord of the God of your forefathers. Havu lachem shlosha anashim l'shavet, appoint 3 people to each tribe. V'yesh lachem, I will send them out. V'yakumu v'yishalchu v'aretz, and let them get up and let them go and travel through the land. V'yichtavu osa lefi nachlasom v'yavo elai, and let them write up a plan according to each one's inheritance, and let them come back to me. In other words, go scout out the land, draw up borders for the rest of you, and let's get this done. Divide it up into 7 portions. In other words, even though it's not completely conquered, and large parts are still under control of the various Canaanite tribes, etc., but at least divide it up so that you know who gets what. Yehuda Yamur al Gvulomi Negev. On the south, Judah will be, in other words, it has to be north of Judah because they already divided it up, their portion. So Ubeit Yosef Yamdu Agbulam Mitzafon, and Yosef will remain in their place in the north because they were north of Yehuda, and then you guys go and divide up the remainder of the land. V'atem, and you, verse 6, Tichtavu et haaretz sheva chalakim, write up a plan to divide the land into 7 portions. Ve'vesim elai, bring it to me, Hena, over here. V'yarisi lachem gorol po, and once you have 7 portions, I will throw lots lifnei Adonai Eloheinu, before God in the tabernacle. And so if you have representatives of each tribe drawing up the 7 portions, so without knowing who's going to get which portion, at least this way we'll have 7 fair portions, and then we throw lots to who gets which part of those 7. Why only the tribes? Because the Levites do not get a portion among you. So his portion is that he is the priest for God. And Reuben, Gad, and half Menashe, they already took those tribes already took their portions on the other side of the Jordan, on the east side, which God, as servant Moshe, gave to them there. So this was the plan. Vayakumu hanoshim vayelechu. The people got up and they went. Vayetzav Yoshua taholchim. And Yoshua commanded those that are going, l'chtov et haaretz leimar, those that were going to write up the plans, as follows. This was his command: L'chu v'hisalchu ba'aretz. Go and scout out the land, v'chisvu osa, and draw up its boundaries, v'shuva elai, and come back. Upo ashlichelchem gor lifnei Adonai b'Shiloh, and here in Shiloh before God, I will throw the lots, cast the lots. So vayelchu anashim vayavru ba'aretz. The people went and they passed through the land, vayichtavum le'arim l'shivach halakim al sefer, and they wrote down in a scroll, in a document, 7 portions based on all the various cities. Vayavo el Yeshua lamachne Shiloh, and then they came back to Yoshua at the camp, which was now located in Shiloh. Vayashlech lam Yoshua gorol b'Shiloh lifnei Adonai, and Joshua cast lots in Shiloh before God. Vayichalek sham Yoshua et haaretz lifnei Yisrael k'machalkotam, and Yeshua thus gave out those 7 portions to those remaining 7 tribes. So now we're going to go through some boundaries. So forgive me if I read this quickly and without translating necessarily many of these place names. Vayal goral mate b'nei Binyamin l'mishpachosam, and the lot of the tribe of the sons of Benjamin passed through their families. Vayetzei gvul goralam bein b'nei Yehuda vein b'nei Yosef, and the boundaries of their gora, of their portion, fell between the sons of Yehuda and the sons of Yosef. And the boundary on the northern rim was their boundary via Allah HaGevol, and the boundary went up El Kesef Yericho to the boundary of Jericho Mitzafon in the north via Allah Bahar Yama, and then it went over the mountains towards the sea. Vayutotzo Sab Midbara Beit Aven, and it ended in the wilderness in the place of Beit Aven. V'yavar misham hagvul, and then the boundary went Luza towards Luz, El Kesef, Luza Negba, to the slopes or to the side of Luz on the south side. He Beitel, which is Beitel, v'yarad hagvul Atrot Adar, and then the boundary went to Atrot Adar, Alahar, to the mountain Sheminegel Beit Choron, the mountain which was south of Beit Choron Tachton, the lower Beit Choron. V'to'ar hagvul, and then the boundary went turned v'nasav, and it curved l'fa'at yam, towards the direction of the sea Negba, and also southward Minahar of the mountain Asher al Pnei Beit Choron Negba. Vayutot otzavel Kiryat Baal, and it went out and it ended at near Kiryat Baal, Kiryat Yearim, which is also called Kiryat Yearim, Ir b'nei Yehuda, which was a city that belonged to the people of Yehuda. Zot Pa'at Yam. This was the western edge. Upa'at Negba, and the southern edge, Miktzei Kiryat Yarim, from the corner of Kiryat Yarim, V'yatzah Gvul Yama, the boundary went westward, V'yatzah El Mayan, Mei Neftoach, to the spring of Mei Neftoach. V'yarad HaGvul El Katzei Ha'ar Ashal Pnei Gaven Hinom, and then the boundary went to the edge of the mountain, which was on the valley of Ben Hinnom, Asher Be'emek Refaim Tzafona, which is in the valley of Rephaim towards the north. So this was near Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem, although it was mostly in Judea, but Jerusalem itself, and it landed in the portion of Benjamin, which is the Yarad Gehinom Al Kesef Hayavusi Negban. The boundary, the valley of Hinnom, which is a valley next to Jerusalem, was on the edge of where the Jebusites were to the south. Remember, the Jebusites, as we saw before and we'll see again, remained in Jerusalem. And then it curved towards the north, and it went out towards Ein Shemesh, V'yatza Galilot, and then it went to Galilot, Asher Nochach Malei Adumim, which is opposite Malei Adumim. V'yarad Evan Bohan ben Ruvain, and it went down to, again, this big stone of Bohan ben Ruvain, which was a large stone, which was apparently a landmark, and it was often seems to have been used as a boundary marker. V'yavar el Kesef Mol Harava Tzafona V'yarad Haravasa, and then it went towards the opposite, the Arava in the north, and then it went down towards the Arava. V'yavar Hagvul el Kesef Beit Chagla Tzafona, and then the boundary went to the northern flank of Beit Chagla V'hayu Totzos Hagvul El Lishonya Mamelach Tzafona, and it ended at the tongue of the Dead Sea, which we discussed earlier, was a geologic feature which pretty much disappeared in modern times in the last 10, 20 years, because the Dead Sea, unfortunately, is drying up. But it was a tongue that divided the northern and southern halves of the Dead Sea. Al-Katzei Hayardi Negban went to the edge of the Jordan in the south. Zegvul Negev, this is the southern border. V'Hayarden Yigbolo Tolifat Kedma, on the east side, the Jordan River was the border. Zot Nachlat B'nei Binyamin Libulata, this is the inheritance of the children of Benjamin, according to its boundaries, Saviv Mishpachosam, according to its boundaries that surrounded it by its families. So, as we saw with Judah, first it listed the border, which we just delineated the border which surrounds Benjamin. Now we're going to list the cities that were within that border. And the cities that were possessed by the sons of Benjamin, according to their families, were as follows. And I'm just going to read them. Yericho, Uveit Chagla, Ve'emek Ketzitz, and I'm in verse 22. Uveit Harava, Utzmarayim, Uveit El, V'ha'avim, V'ha'para, V'afra, Ukvar ha'amona, v'ha'afni, v'gova, Odom shnei meser v'chatzrian. Those were 12 cities and their surrounding villages. Givon v'harama, uve'erot, v'ha'mitzpeh, v'ha'kfira, v'ha'motza, v'rekem, v'yirpe'el, v'tar elah, v'tseila ha'elef, v'hayevu. Okay, so these are all those were the cities v'hayevusi, and the city of the Jebusites, which is Yerushalayim, which is the city of Jerusalem. Givat, Kiryat, and then the other cities, Givat and Kiryat, Arim Arba Esrei. This adds up to 14 more cities of Chatzrean and their surrounding areas. Zot Nachlat B'nei Binyamin B'chosam. This is the inheritance of the descendants of the tribe of Benjamin. So in this chapter, just to recap real quick, the people settled in Shiloh. The capital settled in Shiloh. The Mishkan, the Tabernacle, was built in Shiloh. It was placed in Shiloh and resided there for a long time, for many years later, and as we'll see throughout the books that we'll study together. And they divided the remaining land into 7 portions, and we delineated, and those portions were given out, and Benjamin was given its portion, and we laid out its boundaries and towns. Thank you so much for studying chapter 18. Looking forward to continuing our studies together.